Good morning. Lesson 16. So, thing with math is there's always more than one way to get to the answer, right? Like lots of times I teach you guys, you can try this way or you can try that way, and sometimes you go, well, I got it this way, and that's perfect. It doesn't matter. So for the first question, they want you to use the unit rates to convert the measurements. So they've given you a graph that's got, well, a table that's got distance, volume, mass, time, all on it, and how to convert it. And it's got like 10 millimeters per centimeter, 100 centimeters per meter, 1,000 meters per kilometer, which you guys already know because we've been doing that, right? So for the first one, they want you to convert 50 millimeters to centimeters. Well, I know if I look up at the graph that 10 millimeters equal a centimeter. How many zeros in 10? 1. So that means I'm going to skip that decimal place 1. So if I've got 50 millimeters and I've got to go to centimeters, I know that centimeters are bigger, which means it's going to take less of them to measure the same distance. So that means my 50 needs to get smaller. So I'm going to skip the decimal place 1. And it's 5.0, okay? So you're gonna use that graph. I'll choose one other one just to show you. 4,200 minutes into hours, okay? Now, I know there's 60 minutes in an hour. So I'm dealing with something that has to do with 6 when I look at 4,200 because they're not gonna give you a number where it's a crazy, like 3.465. It's going to be a whole number, maybe a half. That's as hard as it's going to get, right? So I know I have to divide 4,200 by 60, right? Because there's 60 minutes in an hour. So let's start out by getting rid of those zeros. Because if I've got a 0 here and a 0 here, I can cancel them both out. Now, I've got 6 into 420, which if you have a calculator, 420 divided by 6, you can do 4,200 divided by 60. Have at it. If you're going to do it in your head, the way I do it is I go 6 into 42. So on my minute math, I know that 6 times 7 is 42. So it's going to be 7, but then I have to add that 0 at the end. So 4,200 minutes is 70 hours. Okay? So use your graph, and if you need a calculator, use a calculator and convert your units into bigger or smaller units, okay? Pause the video, go do number 1. Number 2, scale on the map is 100 kilometers per centimeter. I will be honest with you, I eyeballed it. I didn't use a ruler on it, and it's tough when you're on OneNote because although I've restored the picture to the original size, if you stretch it or compress it at all, it's not going to be accurate. So I guessed, right? So this question was really easy. It's 100 kilometers per centimeter. So if it's 1 centimeter, obviously this isn't a centimeter, but if it's 1 centimeter between one place and another that they ask you about, 100 kilometers. 2 centimeters, 200 kilometers. 3 centimeters, 300 kilometers. Okay? So go do number 2 and pause the video. Okay, number 3, on a map, 3 centimeters equals 15 kilometers, right? How many kilometers do 19.5 centimeters represent on the map, right? So I figured out that 3 to 15, okay. Now, if I take this down to a unit, like we've been doing, if we look at it as a fraction, right, in its lowest terms. So what's 3/15 in its lowest terms? What's the biggest number that goes into 3 and 15? Well, I know that 3 goes into 15, so I'm going to divide it by 3 to make it into its lowest terms. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. That's one group of 3. And how many times does 3 go into 15? It goes in 5 times, right? So, and then it says 1 to 5, and then 19.5, right? We got 19.5 centimeters. So if we've got, let me see, So we're down to 1/5 was the regular one, right? 1/5 is, but that's at 1 centimeter, and we've got 19.5 centimeters. So how did we get from 1 to 19.5? Remember, it can only be multiplying. How did I change this fraction into that one? Well, I times it by 19.5, right? So if I take this and times it by 19.5, it'll give me how many kilometers, because remember, kilometers were on the bottom, centimeters were on the top, right? So if I times my 5 times 19.5, that'll tell me how many kilometers it is. Okay? Pause the video, go do the question. Number 4, cars are rated according to their fuel efficiency. David's car gets 11.45 kilometers per liter, right? And this is David. And Felicity gets 12.76 kilometers per liter. And Jack, holy jumping, Jack gets 38 kilometers per liter. He must drive like a diesel Jetta or something. How many kilometers can they each travel on 50 liters of gas? Okay, so we need to know 50 liters. Okay, so if we take this as a rate, right? This is 11.45 to 1, right? Which would be 11.45 over 1 liter, right? But we need to know 50 liters. How do we get from 11.45 to 50? Well, if this is 1 liter, we need to times it by 50. Oh, I put it upside down, that's why. 1 liter, 11.45. How many for 50 liters? How did I get there? How did I get from 1 to 50? Yeah, I'm right. Holy cow, I'm second guessing myself. Okay, they can go 11.45 kilometers on 1 liter. How far can they go on 50? Well, I times this by 50, so if you times this by 50, you're going to get the answer here. Same thing for here. If she can go 12.76 on 1, how far can she go on 50? I need to times it by 50, right? So you're going to get an answer for David, an answer for Felicity, and an answer for Jack. They don't ask you who goes farther or how much farther or anything like that. It's just the straight answers. So all you're going to do is multiply it by 50. Okay? Oh, that was confusing. All right, pause the video, go answer about David and Jack and Felicity. Okay, Connor is using paint that covers 12 square meters. A can of paint covers 12 square meters. He has to paint 160 square meters, right? How many cans of paint will he need? So, if 1 can of paint is 12 square meters, how much is 160 square meters, right? So we got 1 over 12 is something over 160. So we need to know, how do we get from 12 to 160? Well, if you had your calculator, you could just do 160 divided by 12. But I don't, so I'll do long division. 160 divided by 12. 12 goes into 16 1 time, which is 12. 4 left over, 40. 12 into 40 goes 3 times, which is 36 with 4 left over. Okay, so this is 13, remainder 4. This we'll talk about in a second. Okay, so I know that it goes in 13 times, which means I need 13 cans of paint. But what about this? It's remainder 4, which means that I'm gonna have some wall of my 160 square meters that 13 cans of paint doesn't cover. But I need to paint it. So what should I do? Can't leave a bald spot on my wall. So how many cans of paint do I actually need, right? It would be okay if I had some left over for touch-ups. You know, if somebody bangs something into the wall and you gotta fix it, it's good to have a little extra. So how many cans of paint would you actually need? All right, pause the video, go answer it. Okay, number 6, watermelon costs. So watermelon costs $1.50 per kilo, right? And peaches cost $1.80 per kilo, okay? Julie made a fruit salad with watermelon and peaches in a ratio of 2 to 3, right? Which means, it says watermelon to peaches. 2 units of watermelon to 3 units of peaches. She made 10 kilos total of fruit salad, okay? So if we use this fraction, she would use 2 kilos of watermelon and 3 kilos of peaches, 2 and 3. But we know that she made 10 kilos, right? So that means there's a couple of ways to do this, okay? We could figure it out, and that would tell us how much 5 kilos costs, and it's pretty easy to go from 5 kilos to 10 kilos, or we could figure out a ratio where it adds to 10 already. So 2/3, let's try an equivalent fraction, okay? Always start easy, go with 2 times 2. So that would make the top one 4, and 3 times 2 is 6. So if she used 4 kilos of watermelon and 6 kilos of peaches, that would be 10. So we could use these numbers to figure out how much it costs. So 4 kilos of watermelon, $1.50 per kilo would be how much? And 6 kilos of peaches times $1.80 is how much, okay? So figure out how much that is, add it together to know how much her fruit salad was. If it were me, I'd be adding more than peaches and watermelon to my fruit salad, but you know, that's just me. And the bonus question. Al is paid $12.50 per hour. It's about minimum wage. He works 4.5 days. And then that's for he works 4.5 hours per day. And he works 8 days. This is a straight multiplying question. He makes $12.50 an hour. How much does he make in 4.5 hours? Well, if he makes $12.50 in the first hour for 1 hour, I add another $12.50, and now he's made $25 for 2 hours, right? But he works 4.5. So if I double this would give me 4 hours. But now I have to figure out what a half hour is, right? What's half of $12.50? I could do half of 12, and I could do half of 50. And I could add them together, and that would tell me the half. So you should maybe do that. And then add it to the $50. And that'll tell us how much he made in a shift. But he works 8 shifts. So you need to then take this answer, what he made in 1 shift, and times it by 8 days. Piece of cake. That'll tell you how much he made in the month. Okay? That's it. That's all for today. Have a good day.